Hello and welcome to Think Inspired, a weekly conversation about inspiration and its role in the creative process. My name is Dhruv and I'm your host. I'm also the founder and CEO of Inspo, a search engine for inspiration. Now, this is a curious and often misunderstood topic that my team and I have been obsessing about for the last year now as we've been building our product. We've had literally hundreds and hundreds of conversations with creative thinkers about the nature of inspiration. And this podcast is our humble attempt to capture some of those discussions, share our learnings with the world, and hopefully help you think inspired. My guest today is Anna Gát, who is a friend and possibly one of the most genuine people you could hope to meet on the internet or offline for that matter. She's the founder and CEO of Interintellect, which is a global community of thinkers who host the most amazing online conversations called Salons. I've been fortunate enough to attend one, and it was a truly meaningful and mind-bending experience. Anna is from Budapest in Hungary, and she lives a very poetic life. I'm grateful to know her and also for the opportunity to speak with her for one whole hour about inspiration. Anna, welcome to Think Inspired. All right, Anna, let's go down our first rabbit hole and start with a big question. What does inspiration mean to you?
It's so interesting, you sent me the questions ahead of the interview, and immediately I felt so superstitious. I was like, I don't want to jinx it. I can't even speak about inspiration. It's like love or desire. You think like, if I voice it, it will go away. It will get, it's like a little bunny that gets scared and it crawls back into the less fun rabbit hole. I think for me, inspiration is not a sudden action. It's more a state of maybe awareness and a state of being in touch with certain parts of ourselves and not being afraid of it. I think it's a very physical state. I often feel that when I write or when I sing or dance, I feel that, or even, the kind of creativity that building a business requires, I often feel that it comes from my body and not my mind. And in many ways, I have to switch off my mind because it can be, so bogged down in the everyday realities of life. That's maybe a state of flow. I know the word flow, is used for multiple things these days. It's also used for, a state of heightened productivity, for instance. I don't think inspiration is always productive. I think in most cases it's not productive, and you have to let it be unproductive, right? In order to kind of get the pearl at the end, if you're lucky.
All right, what a beautiful start. There's so much there that I'd love to unpack. So you've already touched upon this a little bit, but let's, what do you do when you're uninspired? So you mentioned a few sort of activities and rituals, but I'm more curious, like, are you really conscious about them? Like, is there a certain, not necessarily formula, but are there certain patterns and behaviors that you kind of follow when you're seeking inspiration, or is it just completely magical serendipity coincidence?
That's a really good question, because also for me, the word uninspired can mean so many different things.
Yes.
It can be an actual artistic block or writer's block, but it can also mean just a state of dullness in one's life when you are just dissatisfied and feel very gray about how things are turning out. I don't know. I'm a very intense person. I'm in how I, consume or encounter art or media. So I tend to just, do a lot of one thing. Either do a lot of running or do a lot of nature or do a lot of one particular author or one particular filmmaker or musician. And then I go and I just spend 3 weeks or so. Like, it's almost like sending yourself on an extended holiday into another person's work or into an experience. And, but I usually when I get out of these, darker patches, you don't feel like the same person afterward, and you never really wind up where you intended to go. So I think you have to get to a point where you're just so annoyed with the state of an inspiration, that you think, okay, I'm just going to send myself on this metaphorical holiday into somebody's work or some kind of experience, knowing that you won't know the person who will emerge from it. And you have to be okay with this weird kind of small scale rebirth that you will go through.
Wow, that's beautiful. Small scale rebirth. That's incredible.
Maybe it's not small scale. Maybe that's actually the unless you believe in a religion where there's actual rebirth. Maybe this is the only. Maybe we only have the small scale rebirths in our lives, and maybe that's the real shit. So I don't know. I don't want to talk down on it.
That's amazing. So do you feel? I feel like you're the kind of person that the world for you definitely isn't black or white. It's complex and beautiful, and just because you're in a negative state, that doesn't make it a bad state. And you're also, you strike me as these sort of contradictory people, because I don't feel like you're this hyper productivity junkie, but at the same time, you get a lot done, right? But not worshipping at the altar of productivity. So what am I trying to ask here? I'm trying to ask, do you feel like when you are uninspired, that in itself is actually a valuable place to be, and you don't necessarily need to get to a point of creative, metaphorical thunderbolt?
This is an interesting question. When I'm in a negative patch, I don't feel that. I mean, even if consciously I may be aware that this is going to be useful later on, I don't enjoy it at all. And I sometimes feel like my negative patches happen when I always go somewhere in my mind, and sometimes I just run into a wall. And at first it's like video game, you just keep bumping into the same wall over and over and over again, and it makes you increasingly exasperated, and you start hating everybody, and why is this happening? Why cannot I do anything right? And then in a video game, you just oh, I just have to step back, and you can actually go around this wall. You're not going through there. Oh no, stop doing this. So there's that. I really believe in rhythm. I spoke about this a couple of times, how one of the great mistakes that we make in our Western lifestyle is we are required to choose a lifestyle when we are in our late teens and then mold our personality to that.
Yeah.
But that's impossible. We demand of young people, of children, and the impossible. This is literally physically, emotionally, psychologically impossible. What is possible is to understand what kind of a person you are, what is your normal rhythm, and find a life for that. That's the only way, in my view, that you can be, a really fully useful and happy and fulfilled member of society. And I'm still, I'm in my mid-30s. I'm still just learning this and trying to figure out what this means. And I will give you an example. When Interintellect, my company, started, properly working, so it became a day job, right? And with a lot of things to do during the day. After a while, I realized that there was a level of stress in my life that disappeared. There was something I used to be doing for maybe 15 years, right? And a kind of forcing of oneself, a kind of extra effort that I had to allocate energy to every day, and that was gone. And I realized I remember I was just out, just walking in this forest and thinking, and I realized that, oh, it's because Interintellect is show business, and show business requires its own, it has its own daily rhythm, right? It's similar in maybe also it's not just performing arts, but maybe athletes also have a similar kind of arc, right? So, you wake up, the mornings are usually very introverted. So you do reading, writing in the morning. Usually it's a later morning, right? Unless there's some extra thing to wake up for, because you will be up late. Then, as the day progresses, first you do admin and things that, are asynchronous, paying bills and talking to your accountant and blah, blah. And then as the day progresses, the day becomes kind of more and more extroverted. And, in the early evenings, you will have more important meetings. For my time zone, between maybe 4 p.m. my time and 8 p.m. is when I have my more, the meetings with more gravitas, talking to investors, talking to advisors, talking to the great writer that you would like to have on your platform, etc., etc. And then the evening is for the performance, right? So from 7 p.m. to my time, maybe to like 3 a.m. So the evening slot is extremely extroverted, and it's for the people. And you kind of dress up your soul, as you would say in Hungarian. You would dress up your soul for that thing, and then after the show is over, you either have the after party or you have the calm down. And this is a very particular rhythm. A symphonic orchestra, a musician, a ballerina, somebody working at a stand-up comedy show, like anybody who works with entertainment would be intimately familiar with this structure. And when I understood this, and I understood that, this is actually incredibly comfortable for me, and this is my natural rhythm, right? Because I'm 50% extroverted according to tests, so I have both, right? So I need this arc where there is a kind of climax when I am fully open, but I don't have to stay there. I can go back and end my days. Usually I do my most difficult readings at night, things that require really intense focus. After I always say that it's after the horses are back in the stable. So when the show is done, and I also do a lot of walking. So I walk while reading. I walk around in my apartment while thinking. That helps me a lot. I'm very peripatetic. Although I learned from an Italian friend that actually you can't just throw around the word peripatetic so liberally, because it has a very negative connotation in some of the Latin languages. It means that you're a philanderer. I'm definitely not a philanderer yet or now, but definitely like to walk up and down with a book in my apartment and just have a muscle memory of where the sofas are.
Wow, I mean, everything you say is so loaded with poetry that I'm a little worried that this is going to be the worst episode yet, because I am just not being present as a host, and I'm just like making notes and listening to you. But that's what a beautiful...
We can make it meta. But
Right.
just so listeners know, the reason why we don't have video is because Drew was like, "Oh, let's do video," and I'm like, "No, this is too early for the day for me. I'm still not in my extroverted mood, and it's too early for video for me." But
And I also didn't give any context at all. I was like, "Do you want to do a podcast on Friday? Sure, let's do it." But man,
we're talking about the spontaneity. It wouldn't be right if we recorded an episode about spontaneity and we would be like overly rigorous about it. That would be a contradiction.
100%. And honestly, I just love what you said about like the personality of the day just changing, right? And the tempo and the rhythm of the day changing, and how we all respond so differently to those changes. Like I know that I am most alive and like genuinely inspired super early morning, like aggressively early morning, like when I feel like I'm at my sort of best, whatever that means. I love like 4 a.m. starts and write and think, and then meetings and things later in the afternoon. But that time, it's like sacred for me personally. But I feel I just loved your articulation of that. That was really beautiful. And then in the evening, as you said, you dress up the soul. Tell me something. How has your creative process changed over this pandemic? Because just before we started recording, we were also talking about how we should do an in-person salon, right? In Mumbai, I guess it would be the second one. And I told you that we are in a lockdown again, and I don't know when we'll all be meeting in person again. And I guess you've experienced this firsthand as well, because you were doing in-person events and then everything was on Zoom. And I've just been seeing your beautiful Zoom collage of salons grow and grow and grow. So I'm curious, like, how has that process of feeling inspired, feeling, in tune, finding rhythm changed in this post-pandemic world, if at all?
I don't know if I have a polite answer to this.
Oh, please be rude. Yeah, it's all good.
So the first wave of lockdown, so the early 2020, so maybe like March to April, when people really understood that this is going to be serious and this is going to last. I responded to that with a lot of creative output. And I think that that was when the foundations of how the Interintellect community would work and the events would work, we kind of laid down the foundations there. And that period went on maybe between April and November. And by December last year, so half a year ago, I entered into a completely different state. And I spent maybe 6 months in the state that very euphemistically in the startup world is called head down building.
Yeah.
That's not a comfortable place for me to be in many ways. And I felt that I was doing nothing intellectual in those 6 months. Like I was reading some books and, of course I have this incredible luxury to go to salons and speak with the hosts and do editorial work on Interintellect salons. But as a private person, I had absolutely no creative or intellectual output. I wasn't writing anything. I was reading very few things for my own pleasure. I had, a lot of my conversations became limited to, very pragmatic things, or if I went out with friends or I would just like avoid talking about anything high level and just like play with the children and cook and do very, very basic things. And now looking back, I realize that for me, that was survival mode. And in survival mode, you're not creative, right? If you have that kind of stress response, you're not going to start and make an oil painting. That's just not going to happen. And then I think by maybe April, so maybe 1.5 months ago, I had like this moment, like, I have to stop doing this. I have to get out of this because, first of all, what I wanted to build was built. So we actually moved, we moved this glacier that had to be moved so that Interintellect can start growing. I put together a fantastic team. We changed our platform. We created a brand that I think a lot of people are now familiar with. We stabilized our finances. So the groundwork for that very, initial phase of my company had been laid, and I was thinking, okay, I have to just like get myself together because I'm just not happy.
Right.
I'm not happy because I don't, because something negative is happening. It's just because I'm not being fully myself. Yeah. For me, being fully myself also includes having an intellectual life, and the same way as I crave having, an emotional or physical life and to, be active and feel like I live. And that was interesting. I think it's very common, and you see this with musicians as well. And just to kind of go back to the question of show business, that, a musician may feel that, I'm entertaining everybody, but I'm not being entertained myself. And he has to actually say, okay, I have to actually start going to other people's concerts now and listen to my colleagues' music. And I think I felt a little bit like that, I'm so hard and at like providing other people with the kind of intellectual life I would want, but there's a limit to how much I can do of that without enjoying it myself. And enjoying it, I mean, in the sense that, I also have to have a very balanced and healthy intellectual life to understand what people need and to be able to provide that. And I think it's probably a very common kind of startup journey, creator journey, artist journey. And I think for me, I went through that this past winter.
Wow, that was beautiful, and I relate to that so much. I think you and I actually may have had this conversation a long time ago because I was having some weird deja vu that sometimes I've also felt that I would love to be a participant in what I'm building, but not necessarily one of the creators of it, because being one of the facilitators and creators of it means that there's so much that comes along with that. And I sometimes feel like I feel so fraudulent when I'm literally trying to build products that are helping creative thinkers with inspiration. And yet at those moments in time, I'm like, I couldn't be more uninspired right now, just with these 10 meetings and calls and growth and all of this just stuff, like busy being busy, right? And I think you said it wonderfully, that it's not that there's something objectively wrong happening. It's just you're not expressing who you are in its fullest sort of manifestation, in its fullest flavor. And that's always going to be a source of like personal tension.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that I noticed was, the morning writing, which I never used to do. I used to be the write night, edit morning kind of person. And now it's changed a little bit. And I think it's also because of what my job is these days. I encounter the voices of so many other people. So not just, during the salons, but like I have so many people talking to me during the day, and fantastic people. So you want to listen to it. This is not noise, right? This is actually things that you want to engage with. And it took me, there was a learning curve to like how I can encounter and respond to these voices. And for me, having a balance, an internal balance and strong sense of identity, it also seems like a kind of a requirement for being able to be there and exposed in a good sense to these many voices. So I was learning that, and it's been incredible. I mean, every day I will receive communication from people about how Interintellect has changed their lives, and how important it has become in the journey of so many other people. And I feel enormously responsible for this and for being able to keep making this thing that is so important to people. And I understand that I have a deeper understanding now of what parts of myself should be engaged in this process.
That is amazing. You know what? In fact, if you're happy to share, for those who haven't heard and know about this, I would love to hear what was the actual inspiration for Interintellect, because I mean, salons are deeply, deeply insightful, inspirational experiences that just literally last with you, right? In fact, I was going to write you a note separately about this. It's a little bit early to share any of this, but in my free time, I love to write fiction. I'm working on a novel at the moment, and one of the scenes was actually inspired by a salon, right? Like very directly. Do you remember the salon with Nassos about Greek myths?
Yes.
Something he specifically said that just like, and it wasn't even the most like necessarily dramatic or cinematic thing that happened in that 4-hour conversation, but for some reason I just couldn't get it out of my head. I wrote it down on my like Rome notes somewhere and came back to it and have like created literally a character, an entire like mini world around that salon experience. So yeah, for me it was like, okay, it's really it was super inspirational, and it was wonderful. So I'd love to hear from you, the creator herself, about the inspiration for it.
That's fantastic. Oh my God. It's a little bit like a live goals category to have your work inspire scene in a novel. So the first company, I first started working on startups. Okay, let me start this sentence again, because this is not correct, because I used to work in a startup. So the first startup that I ever wanted to found was in mid 2016. And this was a direct response to what I perceived at the time as the looming danger of polarized discourse. And the fact that, I definitely had felt from a generational and geographical point of view that, I grew up strongly believing in and fighting for an ideal, and that there was a lot of value in that, and that was being dismantled. And I remember feeling that, I always thought I would have a meta life. I always thought I would have, that I would write or teach and inspire other people, to undertake action. And I remember that moment when I felt, I have to go and do it directly. It's a call to arms and everybody's needed. The world is not going to redeem itself. Everybody's work and knowledge is needed. But I felt extremely small and not very well trained for this kind of thing. And so I remember, sitting down and completely looking at my own self from a very, very different angle and be like, okay, what do I know? How can I contribute? Right. I remember I didn't know about Ikigai, but I sort of made this mental Venn diagram. I thought, okay, what is something I'm really passionate about? What is a really big unanswered need? What is something that if I really press my brain, I can learn doing? And what is something where I think that there is emerging technology and something that's going to be, possible in a couple of years. And what was in the center of this Venn diagram, I just basically went and started a company for that. And in the first 1.5 years, I was researching for and trying to build an AI tool that was mediating in language. So that would pick up on conflict or misunderstandings and provide tools to help people with their private communication. And Interintellect was born. First of all, I never wanted to make Interintellect my job. I thought this was like a side project. The typical story. It came from a really weird realization, maybe late 2018, early 2019, when I realized that I was wrong. I realized that people, the narrative at the time was all about the necessity for self-defense on the internet and how dangerous it is and toxic and people are, it's just terrible. And I had a series, because I was doing a lot of proprietary research. I was working nights. I was an editor and I was working nights in London. And then I would go home at 6:30 in the morning, sleep a little bit, and then build the company and do my research on the little salary I had for 1.5 years. And I realized that, no, we don't have to build shields. It's not a war. People are actually pretty peaceful and, people want to have good conversations, and you can create a space where that kind of positive engagement can flourish. And so I basically stopped building any technology. We only started building technology for Interintellect maybe 5 months ago. So I was like, okay, so what if I just do it completely analog? 2 Excel sheets, an Eventbrite account, there's a couple of paid Zoom accounts, and just nothing. And we had a Wix website. It would literally cost me $30 a month to run.
Just need a bit of electricity and let's go.
Exactly. Because I realized it's a little bit like somebody just walks out into a field with a flag and says, this is an Interintellect salon, and then that's an Interintellect salon. You don't have to build an app for it. I'm serious. It's an idea, right? It's an idea. Right. It's a meme. And that was a fantastic, complete reversal of how I was thinking about it, and went from super technical self-defense tool to zero tech celebration of openness, trust between strangers. The old idea was something that people would pay for. This is something with which people can make money. So I completely flipped it, and the whole thing all the puzzles fell into place when I did this flip.
Okay, that is absolutely amazing. And I want to continue on a few of those threads into the crazy part of this conversation. In fact, it's actually been pretty crazy and non-linear. So
it's default crazy. That's how I roll.
Remember, I stopped looking at questions and I'm just trying to write down all the beautiful things that you're saying, which I'll probably remember forever. But so just before the call,
put it in your novel. Put it in your.
Yes.
It has to go fully William Gibson. There has to be a scene inspired by a podcast.
I love it. So I want to try something fun and a little wild, and you said you were up for it, so let's just do it. I searched on our new lovely little product, Inspo, search engine for inspiration. I searched for one of your favorite topics just before this call. And that is conversation, right? Okay. Something that you do wonderfully for a living, and you've facilitated some of the most beautiful conversations on the internet, right? So I was just curious that if I search this, and I spent 15 minutes, and I saved 3 pieces of AI inspiration, right? From the product. And what I'd like to do is just one by one, I'm just going to share them with you. And it would be fascinating just to see you just respond. Anything top of mind, ideas, questions, conversations, criticism, abuse, I welcome it all, right?
We will not get to that.
Yes. So the first was just an interesting word association, right? With conversation that Inspo picked up by analyzing 120,000 collaborative poems in Haiku Jam that have used the word conversation. And these have been written by like literally people, strangers around the world. And the word association was silence, right? So I'm curious for you, what comes to mind when you think of conversation and silence?
I recently did a silent salon. So we came together and we're just silent for 3 hours, and we had a conversation at the beginning about silence, and then we had 3 hours of people could just sit there and think or meditate or cook or read, write, whatever they wanted to. And one of the interesting things that came up in an exchange with one of the participants called Katrina Dela Cruz, who's an educator based in California.
Oh, she's lovely. Yeah, she was in one of my salons and Twitter and
she's
DMs.
Fantastic. And, she's coming on my humaning series on Sunday. Yeah. So it was really interesting. Like, she described the world as very noisy, in which silence is, an oasis where you retreat to, or that, is very, it's something to treasure and something to seek out. And I remember sitting there and I was thinking about that Gus Van Sant film about Kurt Cobain, that is just silence and then occasional music. And when I worked in music, a very talented person I worked with, a composer, performer, told me that this is how being a musician feels, that it's constant silence with the occasional music. And I realized, like, that's also how I see life. Wow. It's constant silence with occasional conversation. And that's why the conversation is so important. And that's why that's the gold that you go for, right? And, I'm extremely bad with audio. I have Clubhouse. I almost never listen to it. I never listen to audiobooks. I almost never listen to podcasts. Yep. I spend most of my days in silence. I write a lot and I speak a lot with people. Maybe I chat with them or exchange emails. But for me, I also don't listen to music as a background ever. If I listen to music, then I listen to music, or it's a very integral part of what I'm doing in the moment, right? Either for inspiration or for doing sports or whatever, but I don't have background music or background noise. I don't have a TV. And so, a conversation, a phone call, a meeting is not the default, it's the deviation from the norm.
Yeah.
So I see life as silence or silent, with the moments of connection as what is different and what is the opposite or the complement. And it's a very interesting difference between one individual and the next.
Remarkable. I'm definitely going to be attending the next silence salon. Will you be doing them again? Will it be a series? Or
I would love
something?
to. I was very productive actually during those 3 hours, so it's definitely works.
Amazing. Okay, number 2. So this is actually a question that Inspo used GPT-3 and creative associations from Haiku Jam just to write. And the question is, what is the relationship between conversation and connection?
Connection can mean two things, right? It can mean an encounter in a moment, or it can be, it can refer to the creation of a lasting bond or relationship, right? Which is interesting because conversation is between these two extremes, right? It's not a moment, but it's also not something that can last for years. So we have these 4 rules of hosting for Interintellect hosts, and one of the key principles is what I call stickiness, which is that, when I lived in London, I would often go to these parties, and I'm sure it's the same in every big city, in New York City or Mumbai or Paris, maybe Los Angeles. You go and meet people and have incredibly deep conversations. You open up, you share stories about your parents, and then you listen and invest time and energy into like remembering the stories that the other person shared. And then you leave the party and you never, ever, ever, ever see that person ever again.
Yeah.
And that's the norm. That's the default, right? And I hated that. And I remember after a couple of weeks, I was just so burnt out. And everybody becomes incredibly superficial, because why would you give your soul to a conversation if there's like nothing will come out of it? The whole system is designed for this transience that I think is incredibly unnatural, and we're not physically or emotionally built for it, right? We are physically and emotionally built for living with 150 people in a cave. That's it. Like, that's how you, right? Like, or 30. We're not designed even for meeting new people.
Yep.
Like, that's a whole acquired skill that people have to be taught, and groups of humans had to figure out how to engage with strangers without spares, right? It's not something that is fully in our nature. And so what I'm trying to do is even before I started the conversation at Interintellect Salons, that if you want to, you will meet these people again. So there's a foundation there that says, even when I was just doing IRL, casual meetups before we became an actual company, we would tell people that, there will be email addresses will be shared. And if you want to, you will be sent around everybody's email and everybody will meet everybody. It's fine. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. If you want, it's not obligatory. You can say afterwards that I hated this and I never want to see people again. But if you want to, this is not a gift that will be a loss, right? When you're in a city life scenario, every gift is a loss. You're given something and then you're immediately robbed of it.
Yep.
And I thought, what if it's just a gift with no pressures, but that there is continuity, that you can be your own self. You can listen to other people and remember their names and remember where they're from and what they do. And not just as an interesting data point in your own selfish thinking, but to actually stay in touch with that person and have them in your life. I really believe that, our life is a work of art. And one of the things that you build is your tribe, right?
Yeah.
We don't come into this world in the 21st century being given a tribe. You have to build it. And what I was really, really deeply suffering from when I lived in London was this inability to do it, because I felt that I was in a system that just does not allow that to happen. And I really wanted it. And I just felt that it was so abnormal. It felt like as if humans were required to walk on their hands. Like, okay, you can do it, but it's going to be extremely tiring, and you probably won't be doing your best thinking while upside down. And so I built everything around this. And how would that work if we removed this constant sense of loss from life? And I think people respond to this extremely positively. And it's such a relief, and there's so much love and so many people in Interintellect, they start working together or studying together, they become each other's mentors or even lovers. It's like there's so many things happening because the system is designed to foster something that is not sad by default. It's happy by default.
That is absolutely fascinating. It's like, in a world that just doesn't seem to last, right? Doesn't even seem to last and make it till tomorrow in the way that you know and you can trust. This is something that lasts, right? It's just a context that will be around. And that's innately and intrinsically beautiful for all the reasons that you just said. And actually, if you just zoom out, take almost like a strategic meta view of like a business or whatever as a project, and you think about moats, right? It's almost like it's future proofed by design. Like there's nothing you have to do here, right? It works because it will be around tomorrow, right? And the people will be around tomorrow. I think so many like companies and businesses, that's the biggest existential fear, right? Like, will I be around tomorrow, right? Whereas it's like, well, you seem to have like subconsciously or unconsciously, or I don't know, hyperconsciously just like figured that out, which is just incredible.
I think this is kind of maybe a moment to circle back to your earlier question, which is, are moments of sadness or uninspiration useful?
Yeah.
And yeah, they are useful in the sense that they might lead you to insights that other people find incredibly useful, right? I often feel that there's really no point in any kind of human suffering unless, it endows you with a kind of empathy that you didn't have before. But that's really all of it. It doesn't make it very enjoyable in the moment.
It's often a retrospective realization as well.
Yeah,
once you're past the pain, you're like, oh, let's romanticize it. But
yeah. and point at like completely random negative things and say like, that made me the man I am today.
Yes.
Let's do this to my son as well. No, don't do it.
Oh man, passing on trauma. I love it. Okay, so last piece of inspiration. So this is another GPT-3 generated thought, right? And yeah, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this thought starter. So the thought is, the future is a conversation between the present and the past.
I disagree with your bot.
Lovely.
Sorry, GPT-3. I know a lot of work went into you. Sure, I will write a letter of apology to Sam Altman. I often think that, and this is very important to me in how I see the wider implications of my work. I often say that conversations are the joints between the bones. So the events, I mean, this is a terrible metaphor, maybe, but this is like the closest I can it's imperfect, but it's still better than the other, ways in which I could explain this. So you have world events, right? And that can be just a private event, like people, I don't know, move house or get married or immigrate or, leave their jobs, whatever you do, right? Like you go from state A to state B in the merciless physics of life. And conversation is the joint between the two things. And you can look at diplomacy that way. You can look at, writing a PhD that way. You can look at a lot of long, ongoing processes. And conversation is this space of flexibility and agility, right? That enable movement and enables progress and movement. And so I often think that, I won't be able to build the bones because I'm not a politician. I'm not, a captain of industry or whatever. But what I build is the joints, is to ensure that people can move and people can be healthy and can be mobile and free, right? If you can't move, you're not free. And this is how I see, this is why people are so, stressed over the free press and things like this. Is not just because, we read some book when we were 16. No, it's because you literally can't move and participate and be free unless you have joints, right? It's a terrible metaphor. I'm sorry. I apologize to all the listeners. But if you actually think about it, conversation sits in these little pockets between state A and state B in any moment of change. And life is just moments of change. So there's no moment where that would not be important.
I actually disagree with you only in that I think it's a great metaphor. It's maybe a little visually stark, but I think
it's very. I think about I don't know how it's called in English. The IKEA also sells these little wooden dolls where you can bend the arms. They are.
Right, yeah.
I don't know how it's called. Oh no. And then they have these little feet and they are so maybe if you want, you can put it just standing, or you can create some kind of ballet arabesque, out of it. And in order to go that you have to change and turn all the little limbs, right?
Yeah.
And I think what turns them is conversation.
Wow. I just love your level of self-awareness and how you've almost made meaning for yourself, right? Because I've often found sometimes, you really, I feel am I really doing something that's needed or valuable? right? Like helping people write poems together, or like building, inspiration products and writing fiction. Sometimes I really feel that sense of like, not even imposter syndrome, but just deep insecurity. Like, is this really the need of the hour? But then, like you said, and you said it more beautifully than I ever could, that, well, what else could or would I do? I'm not going to be this person, or I'm not going to be like, let's say, taking us to Mars, because who knows? I have no idea, right? And it's just about, finding out like almost how can you serve, right? What's the best way that you can serve, and almost like making peace with that, and then expressing that, because it is beautiful and it does matter, right?
I agree. I mean, be really good at one thing.
Yes.
Is the best you can do with your life. Whatever that is, in literally, and I have friends who have very, sometimes extremely like, ambitions or desires that they are conflicted about, because they thought of themselves as intellectuals, and suddenly they find themselves incredibly taken with, I don't know, community gardens.
Yeah.
And I'm like, then do a great community garden. In a weird way, you will create more of an intellectual platform in your city through that than if you force yourself into, I don't know, whatever you had in mind when you were 15 about yourself, right? But just to go back to the kind of bodily metaphor, my first startup was called IKEA, and that came from the mathematical kind of expression of for mutual information from information theory, right? So I, X, Y in the bracket, right? That's mutual information, and I think about how important that was to me, and I remember when I first saw the Venn diagram of how information is shared, and I think maybe the whole joint idea is the same, because actually, when I was saying that, if you want to go from a standing position to an arabesque, you're not the little wooden doll, but an actual human, the amount of communication needed inside your body to make that happen is unthinkable. Like, your entire body communicates with all of its other parts, right? All the time. And, you want to change, you want to create that going from state A to state B, and your body, because it runs on code, it just runs the code of making sure that the right things communicate with the right things so that change can happen. And so I think we just do that at a higher level of complexity.
Okay, that's really inspiring. I feel like, honestly, if there's no one that ever listens to this episode, I think it's still okay, because I'm going to listen to it like over and over. It's really great.
We could have just done a Zoom call through.
Yeah, no, but thank you. This is amazing. So last quick question before we close. Yeah, has there anyone who's inspired you recently that you'd like to give a shout out to?
All Interintellect hosts, for being my champions and my heroes, and for the amount of openness and curiosity and hard work and kindness. They astonish me every day, and I'm so grateful.
And on behalf of all those hosts, I'm going to say thank you. I'm not one yet, but I hope to be really soon. So amazing. Thank you so much, Anna. This was inspiring. Amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. We're still new to podcasting and would be grateful for any feedback, so do drop us a line. Now, just before signing off, I'm super excited to share that after a year of private beta, we have officially launched Inspo, the search engine for inspiration. So if you'd like to enrich your creative thinking on any topic and elevate the start of your creative process, head over to getinspo.co on desktop web and have a play. See you next week, and think inspired.